Trailblazers, welcome to camp. I'm Beth, a design principal at Education Elements, and together with my colleagues Justin and Katie, we'll be sharing how competencies can support nimble leadership at all levels of a school and district. We'll share how you can articulate what you need to do your job. We'll share leadership elements you can use to master competencies. We'll provide a list of leadership functions and approaches and provide you with a framework for systemic leadership development. Speaking of Katie, let's go ahead and check in with her to get us started on this learning. Where are you, Katie?
Thanks, Beth, and thanks to all of you for tuning in today and being part of this important conversation. Next up, we'll spend some time talking about the why and why we think of professional development in the terms of competencies. First, let's talk about leading a large, complex organization. You all do it, and you know, just as soon as you align your mission and vision with your strategic objectives, a plan that will carry you into the next decade, this happens.
Piece number 2000. Took a long time, many hours, but thank you.
Yikes. So how do we recover when our best laid plans are thrown overboard due to an unexpected situation? So as you're working to put this puzzle back together, you may run into a few challenges. First of all, the puzzle may have changed altogether. You could be missing pieces you didn't even know about when you started putting the puzzle together. You're unsure of your progress. What progress, if any, have you made towards your long-term goals? Your teammates are exhausted. They're as tired as you are, and they're tired of facing the same challenges over and over again. There's also this lingering fear that exists with everyone that as soon as you put in that last puzzle piece, you'll have to start all over again. So with all of these challenges and a puzzle that is this complex, I ask you, how do you finish it? Where do you even begin when you're not even sure what the final image is meant to look like?
That's a great question, Katie. In order to solve for the unknown, leaders need to be able to learn on the fly, and learning really needs to be a part of the way you do your job. To lead in an organization where learning is part of the culture, you really need to be the lead learner. We need to be self-aware in order to lead, and identifying the competencies required in different roles and different situations is a very efficient start for self-reflection. We can first turn to Peter Senge's research about learning organizations in order to be able to identify the different leaders needed in different situations. He and his team were able to come up with 3 different types of leaders. 1, local line leaders, 2, executive leadership, and 3, internal networkers or community builders. Local line leaders are those people in your school who have a locus of control in which they can test out and experiment with new or innovative ideas. Executive leaders are those who have the positional authority to shift organizational culture and practice by allowing for the local line leaders and internal networkers to scale and test out new ideas. Internal networkers or community builders are those who are able to cross-pollinate ideas from one space to another in order to build relationships. The same person may play each of these roles in different contexts, and the analysis of competencies allows leaders to be very specific about what it is that they want to develop next. My colleague Megan writes extensively about these types of leaders in her most recent blog post, which you can find linked in the description below.
This past year has been puzzling and challenging for all of us, and I'm sure you found yourself identifying with one or more of the 3 roles above. But I'm also curious, what type of leader did you most embody this past year? Make sure to drop your response in the chat and let us know.
for your reflections, Trailblazers. Let's continue our adventure in the next video with our colleague, Justin. Now that you've gotten some framing from us about why we think leadership competencies are important, my colleague Justin Toomer and I want to dig into the what. What are leadership competencies and what might they look like on your team?
Especially after these last couple of school years, I'm sure a lot of you have seen many of these kind of articles floating around, giving you tips on the kind of leadership skills that you need right now, or the top 5 skills to help you lead into the next school year. But ultimately, which one is right for you and your team? My colleague Beth and I want to help you think about how you and your team should be finding the right leadership competencies for you.
One thing that we've learned as we work with leaders in schools and districts across the country, and even within our own teams, is that these types of competencies are really helpful in clarifying what it is you need to do your job. What we've learned, though, is that in order to really develop these competencies, there's a deeper level of analysis needed. At Education Elements, when we start the process of self-reflection and peer evaluation, we look at the essential elements of leadership and group them into competencies. We think of these as the skills needed to really master leadership competencies.
For example, in this Harvard Business Review article, one of the competencies that they're measuring is the ability to shape a vision and share a vision that's both exciting and challenging for your team. Sounds great, right? However, how does one actually get that done? How do you measure success? How can you make sure that you're progressing to actually making sure that you're bringing that competency to life? Something that we're thinking about in Education Elements is actually about breaking that competency down into actual essential skills and practices that leaders need to be following in order to bring that competency to life. Let's return back to that competency from Harvard. If we were to break that down to some of the essential elements that you might need, a few that might pop up are having a strong personal vision, being able to lead from within, from an authentic space. Facilitation, being able to manage and create spaces that are psychologically safe for your team to collaborate and engage authentically. And then also understanding relationships. At the end of the day, everyone wants to be able to contribute to the human story. And it's important for us as leaders to find the right entry point for them to do that. So thinking about all of these different elements that we have now, breaking down these larger competencies into real, actual, visible skills and practices that can be improved upon, it's important that we find the right mental model to help us understand how, as leaders, to find the right skills that we need for the right challenges that we're trying to solve. For us, our team has found it's best to learn from the best. And ultimately, we wanted to learn from the best puzzle masters to help us put the right practices forward. All right, let's break down 2 approaches that different puzzle masters utilize to solve some of the most challenging puzzles known to man. Our first approach is the Jigsaw Master. We're going to learn about the Jigsaw Master through Karen Puzzles. She is a popular YouTuber whose videos get millions of views as she breaks down some of the best strategies that she uses to solve the most challenging jigsaw puzzles that she gets. When utilizing the Jigsaw Master approach to solving complex problems, it's important to understand first that you do have all of the pieces necessary in front of you. You just need to have the time and intention to put all those pieces together and make them fit. And so the kind of leadership elements that a puzzle master would need to solve those kind of challenges, you need to be patient, to find the right pieces at the right time, and to understand that that's going to take time. You need to have a high sense of adaptability. You may have an initial approach that you want to take, but based upon how the pieces are shaking out, you might have to change that up. And then ultimately, you need to have a level of inquiry that allows you to have the curiosity and to be able to take those risks to move a piece that you're not sure if that's where it should be, but ultimately you're going to find that that's exactly where it needs to be in the end. Those are a few of the essential elements that a jigsaw master might need to solve their challenges. The second approach that we might take to solve a complex challenge is that of a diagnostician. And there's no better diagnostician to learn from than Dr. Gregory House. On the show House, they are often presented with a case that has a very impactful problem, but only one tiny little symptom to help them understand where that problem is coming from. And so House and his team had to put agile processes in place in order to test taking that data, and then ultimately retest until they found the solution. And so the kind of skills that a diagnostician might need when faced with a larger problem with little information, you might need learning agility, you might need to persevere, and then ultimately have a strong level of data fluency to take in that information and process it quickly. In order to create a culture that supports these elements being learned and scaled across the organization, it's important that you have a holistic view of all of the elements that are in front of you that are needed in order to be successful on your team, and that you understand how to utilize and mine for the right elements at the right time.
Let's consider your competencies as a leader. Let's go back to that HBR article that we shared earlier. My ask for you is to pick a competency from the list and name all of the leadership elements you relied on this past year. What were your strengths? Drop your answers in the chat so Justin and I can respond to them.
All right, Trailblazers, thank you for sharing those with us. Let's continue our adventure in our next video with my colleague, Katie.
Okay, we're in the home stretch now, campers. We've learned a lot this series. We've talked about the why, the what, and now we'll end with the how. How to even begin approaching using a competency-based model with your leaders through your professional development series in your school district. So when we think about change, we believe that change starts with the individual, and that individual work needs to be aligned with the greater organizational context around it. And what that means is you need to create systems and practices so when that individual change occurs, there's a ripple effect and it's felt district-wide. When we think about changing your individual practice, you can change how teams work, which then shifts the way that your organization functions.
Exactly, Katie. Now let's take a moment to explore Education Elements' ADAPT framework. This is our methodology and our approach to intentionally growing leadership throughout your organization. The first step is to appraise. We can't know where we're going if we don't understand where we are right now. So we need to have the measures in place to understand the skills that we currently have in abundance and to understand the skills that we need to get to where we want to go. The next step is design. Now that we know the pathway, we now need to design the environment that it takes for us to all learn together as an organization. Once we put those designs in place, we now have a plan to adopt these practices and skills across our organization. And once we take that plan, we now need to allow spaces for practice within our organization for those skills to be developed and honed within a safe environment. And once we've identified, mined those skills throughout our organization, we now need to create opportunities for our leaders to teach. You cannot lead until you can share those new ideas and implant those new ideas within other teammates. And so now we can create opportunities for our leaders to teach within their network. And that's how we know we've made it through the adapt phase.
Thanks, Justin. So we've covered a lot here together today. Just to recap, we've learned a little bit more about how to articulate exactly what you need to do your job. We've provided a list of leadership elements that you can use as master competencies. We've talked more about leadership functions and approaches, and provided a framework for systematic leadership development. Now that we've put all of these puzzle pieces together, Justin and I want to hear from you. What do you need to invest the most in your leadership development? Now this has been a great day. Thank you all for joining us. I'm so excited to go join my friends Beth and Justin around the campfire and talk a little bit more about everything we covered here today.
Thank you so much for engaging with us and learning about leadership competencies. I can't wait to see you around the next campfire. Who's ready for some more?